Foundation and Palakkad Tamil Research Center, which is spearheaded by Professor K.A. Rajaram. So today is a very important day for all of us because we're going to have a special speaker in Sri Pankaj Saxena. And Pankaj Saxena himself uh, is an exponent in Hinduism, mythology, history, the pagan scripts, and temple culture and whatnot. Hinduism is not a religion, it's a way of life. And we are probably one of the oldest religions on this planet Earth. So, to know more about it, I think it'll be a great pleasure to listen to Pankaj ji. And Pankaj Saxena at the moment is outside Shanti Niketan. So he is a real exponent who has authored a lot of textbooks and is an expert in the field of Hinduism. So he's going to take us through a very important journey, how our temples, our scriptures, our family, and our society can guide the youngsters to understand more about Hinduism because it's a way of life. And we were the guys who gave the world how to live a healthy, happy, and meaningful life. Like the scripture which talks about the unity in diversity is Sahanam Avatu, Sahanam Gunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Atita Mastu, Ma with Vishavahai, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So the peace mantra, the so-called peace mantra, which talks about the inner peace and the peace in the immediate neighborhood around you and also in the whole universe. So to understand that we are a part of the same and the only cosmic force requires a lot of pondering and insight. So this way, our religion has taught us that we are all one, Ekam Sat, Vipra Bahuta Bodanti. So all the saints and the seers call by different names, but it is one single cosmic universal force that is ever pervasive inside us and outside us. In Tamil, we use a word called Kadavul. Kadavul is one who is inside and also outside. So Ullum Kadandum, that's what is called Kadavul. So God is inside you and outside you. So the cosmic force which is outside is inside you. So Swami Vivekananda gave a lot of insight into the strength of man. And he said that you have all the universal power inside you. So you're not a weakling and you can do anything in this planet Earth or even in the universe. That sort of a message is loud and clear, given by us to the world 5,000 years ago at least. I'm sure it could be more. I'm sure we should listen to Pankaj ji to tell us more about it. And I will now hand over to Professor Rajaram to do a few words of formal introduction on Sri Pankaj Saxena, and then we will listen to Pankaj ji. Thank you so much once again for being with us, sir. It's a great honor and privilege for VGM Foundation as well as the Palakkad Tamil Research Center. Thank you so much. Over to Professor Rajaram.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan Prasad. Respected Chairman of VGM Hospital, Dr. Mohan Prasad, and today's chief guest from Mumbai, Dr. Pankaj Saxena, and Dr. Madhura Prasad Suman, who proposing the vote of thanks, and especially welcome Dr. Ramesh, leading ophthalmologist in Karur. This morning I telephoned to him, he immediately joined. And Mr. Ravi, leading advocate, Chennai, Professor Geeta, retired principal, and members of VGM family, and the great Pankaj Saxena. He is a reader, writer, traveler, and meditator. Expert in reading, writing, traveling, and meditation. Dr. Mohan Prasad spoke about mantra. I was initiated to transcendental meditation by one David Bidowi of US sometime back in Chennai. Bharati, Tamil poet Bharati, Subramanya Bharati has spoken about mantra. Mantram bol venduvada sol inbam. So, each and every word being pronounced by Pankaj Saxena is a mantra. And he is the co-founder of Cultural Creative. Ours is a Tamil Cultural Research Center. We are concentrating on the development of Tamil culture, Indian culture, and world culture. And he was director of Center for Cultural Leadership. Leadership is different, cultural different is different. Only when there is culture, leadership will be efficient, will be competent. If you want to be a competent leader, you should have that leadership based on culture. That is what Thiruvalluvar, the learned Tamil poet, has said in Tirukural. Near 1330 couplets. Tirukural contains a lot of management tenets. I request Dr. Pankaj Saxena to have a comparative study of Tirukural with his other literature. That is then one more thing. He was associated with the Indus University, Ahmedabad, an associate professor, and he was also a co-founder of India Inspires. Very wonderful topic. India Inspires. What we want today is inspiration. A poet needs inspiration. Then only he can sing, he can compose poetry. So inspiration is part and parcel of our life. And he had education. He is a BA English Literature and Psychology from Jivaji University, and his MA English Language and Literature and PhD in English Language Literature from Jivaji University. So basically, he is a literature man. Literature combined with cultural anthropology. Here he is giving talks on cultural anthropology and evolutionary biology and ecology. And above all, Hindu temples. He has visited nearly 1,200 temples. Wonderful, 1,200 temples. And Indian art, the Tamil culture, based on Tamil Kovil Kalai, temple architecture. 1,200 ancient Hindu temples. Then evolutionary biology and ecology. Biology is something different. Development of biology is evolutionary biology. And anthropology, cultural anthropology. Then Pankaj Saxena is a cultural man. He's everything he speaks, everything he dictates, everything he leads, he takes culture as the main background. I personally thank and grateful to Dr. Mohan Prasad to get Dr. Pankaj Saxena to be here with us. So I request all people who have joined YouTube to the person who has missed today is missing. Today, those people who have missed today's program, it's a costly miss. This is a very rare program. Pankaj Saxena speaking about reading, the complications of reading, the technicalities of reading, technicalities of writing, and technicalities of traveling, and technical meditation. Above all, the technicalities, complexities, riddles of meditation. So I once again, Doctor, I just once again tell, I had told the last meeting, Dr. Mohan Prasad is the person who has taken keen interest in establishing these online events every month. And so far, I think 11 or 12 seminars have been conducted. This was inaugurated by Dr. Sudha Seshayan, the Vice Chancellor, the dynamic Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu MGR Medical University. I request Dr. Mohan Prasad to invite all scholars, doctors, chartered accountants, lawyers from all fields to go ahead with this function. I wish this function all the very best. Now I hand over the stage to Dr. Pankaj Saxena. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Rajaramji and Mohan Prasadji, for giving me this opportunity to be here. I am hardly an expert on all these things that you talked about. I am a lifelong student, and the attitude that I took up of being a student, it has been the most pleasant to me, because in everything that I seek, there is also the element of pleasure, enjoyment. And being a student to always learn is a great thing. Is a great attitude to enjoy. It's the best feeling that I have when I still visit a temple, even after visiting so many temples. When I run into an old ancient temple, the sheer feeling that it gives me is, it makes me a child once again. It makes me a child full of wonder, full of all the natural enthusiasm that a child has when he visits a great place for the first time. So today's topic is very vast. I will just want to give you a taste into what Hindu temple ecosystem is. The topic is Hindu civilizational continuity, temples, Gurukulam, and state. Those three topics are themselves very vast in themselves when you connect them to the temple ecosystem. We'll just have a glimpse of what they are. Uh, I would like to start with the temple and its relation with Gurukulam, because that is the most central aspect of a temple. When you go to a temple, as we'll discuss, the most central thing, the most central quest is to have darshan of Bhagwan, of the deity in the Garbhagriha. And the institution which is organized around it to keep it an institution which goes on for not just centuries but millennia. You need a Gurukulam. Those two are extremely and very intricately connected to each other. And that is why that is the most central institution to it. The Gurukulam, where a guru teaches his shishya, is the most central institution in a temple ecosystem. What is tradition, if we may ask? We are discussing about continuity. We are discussing about civilization. We are discussing about culture. So what is tradition? Tradition, as I have understood from my studies, tradition is that which continues. It has to have a living continuity across generations. It cannot be discontinuous. And that is the nature of everything true also. Uh, Anything which is true, anything which is pertaining to the ultimate truth cannot be discontinuous, cannot appear and disappear. It always has to be there. So tradition is that which continues. The very word tradition means continuity. So when you talk about civilizational continuity in the temple ecosystem, you cannot help but talk about tradition and how it continues. And Gurukulam is just that. Just yesterday, I had a wonderful, amazing experience. And one of the good fortunes of my life is that without deserving all of that, I am thrown into situations in which give me great experience of our culture, our dharma, our civilization, without actually working or deserving it. So yesterday I had the good fortune of going with Shri Parvati Baulji. Most of you would know her. She spent a lot of her time in Trivandrum. Just for the last 5 years, she has created an ashram here and in Shantiniketan, Bengal, and she's now conducting her activities from here. And yesterday I was invited to go with her on on a yatra called Madhukori. Now, what is Madhukori? Kori is a word in Bangla which is singing. And Madhukori is when the baul singers, who are baul singing, if you do not know, is a great tradition of Bengal, which combines the deepest truths of Vedanta and the Vaishnava tradition and it conveys everything through singing and dancing. That is the tradition. So every week, every month, on various days, they go through barefoot, they go on a yatra, continuously singing Harinam, and they go to each and every home of a certain village, and they sing Harinam, they sing Haribol. When they go there, they sing, they dance, they chant Hari name, and the people of a certain household, they donate some food items so that the activities of the ashram and anything else, any function festivities can go on. But this is not just a social institution. It is not just a group of mendicants and ashram people just going and asking for bhiksha. It is a lot more than that. We all know what the condition of Bengal is and was 400, 500 years ago. In every home that I went, I saw a plaque uh, which depicted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the same posture, saying Haribol, going to each and every home and spreading the name of Sri Krishna, spreading the name of Hari, spreading the glory of Sanatan Dharma. So what he would do, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is that he would go to each and every home where the tradition had dimmed, where the tradition had weakened. He would even go to the people who had gone over to other religions. And he would go to these villages, make them say Hari Bol, and he would bring them back to our fold. And this is how he would just walk barefoot, continuously singing. You cannot drop that singing. It's very difficult for 3 hours. We can try that. Just not even for a single second, they would drop the singing. They would drop the chanting of Hari name, and they would just continuously keep doing that. Everywhere they would go, people would prostrate themselves in front of them and then sing and dance in the name of Hari, in the name of in the divine name. And this is how Dharma would reach each and every nook and corner, each and every home. This is how communities, even very different communities, even when they were uh, very poor, even when they lived in extremely remote areas, they were connected to the core of Sanatan Dharma. And the tradition is that Parvati Baulji still takes care of that. Every home has to maintain the plant of Tulsi, and they need to take care of it. If they do not, then she comes every month and asks them, uh, are they doing it or not? And when she goes on Madhukori, she personally offers gel to water to the Tulsi plant. So she takes care, she makes it a point, she takes care. And then after singing and taking the food donation charity, and then she leaves and goes on to another home. This is how it gave me a glimpse into how this tradition must have been when we were ruled by ideologies and institutions and kings which are not even Sanatani, not even Hindu. They were hostile to our tradition. And even in that era, even in an area which became at that time half or majority of non-Hindu majority, even at that time, how to spread the name of Sanatana Dharma and a tradition which is not even known for, which is very vegetarian, which talks about not about this, which is extremely far away from all of this, and yet that tradition came up with something uh, which uh, which can uphold Sanatan Dharma, which can take the the center, the very essence of Sanatan Dharma to every person and every nook and corner of this country. Now, how did this become possible? Because Parvati ji, after that and before that also, told that the greatest glory is that of the Guru. And while she sings in a lot of her bhajans, a line comes, Guru hi kevalam. Only Guru is there. There is no other reality. There is no other truth. So that is how central the tradition of Guru Shishya Parampara is in our dharma. Because if that doesn't continue, if the continuity breaks, then the tradition breaks. And this is not something which you can just record in written form. This is not something which you can put on a hard drive and then later retrieve. This is something which has to continue by people. It is a living tradition, so that by individuals, by institutions like this, through Guru to Shishya, and then so on, so on. This is how central Guru Shishya Parampara is. So wherever Guru Shishya Parampara is, it is carried on while they are roaming, they are roaming, but while they are stationary, there has to be an ashram. Ashram is where all these sadhus reside. They do sadhana, they do meditation. When the shishyas come, when a host of shishyas come, they get initiated into sadhana. They learn from the teachers right there in ashram. And wherever there is an ashram, there is always a temple. And wherever there is a temple, there is always an ashram. Uh, Before the destruction, before the invasions, every temple, every single temple had an agraharam. Every great temple had a village of Brahmins and seekers around it who would study, who would devote their entire lives to the study of Sanatan Dharma. And that's how this tradition would continue. Some people resent this idea that why uh, we know how much propaganda is spread about how Brahmanism exploited this and that and that. I'm not going into all of those debates. I've tackled them elsewhere. But just to reinstate a point, the hierarchy here is not of power. The hierarchy here is not of resources. The hierarchy here is of what is the reigning, what is the dominant epistemology. Is it the value system? What is the dominant value system? Is it the value system of knowledge? Or is it the value system of money? Or is it the value system of power? And Sanatana Dharma has always, through every institution that it has ever fielded, including the temple ecosystem, it has always established the supremacy of knowledge. Brahmins are superior only in the sense that they represent that knowledge tradition, that knowledge system. And that is why there is great respect of any knowledge seeker. If you go to Sadhu, for example, I'm visiting this ashram. Most of these people are not Brahmins because once you leave this sansar and become a sadhu, you no longer have any varna or jati. So it is knowledge seeking that is considered supreme. And that you can see at the center of the temple ecosystem also. Another aspect of our tradition of the temple ecosystem and how it continues, you need to understand the orality of a tradition, which Dr. Kapil Kapoorji again and again expresses. That all the greatest traditions of the world, not just here in Bharatvarsh, but all over the world, the greatest spiritual traditions of the globe have been oral. What does that mean? Oral doesn't mean that you don't have any written scriptures. Of course, if you consider the history and the literary history of Bharatvarsh, we have created the greatest number of written scriptures also. We have the most number of manuscripts in the world. Still, after so much destruction of libraries during the Middle Ages, and the apathy of the British era, and after that, we still have the most number of manuscripts. So we did write a lot of scriptures. We did record a lot of scriptures in written form, but they were first imagined and came in the oral form. And there is a great difference. There is a great and stark difference in things which are imagined orally, in words and sentences that are imagined orally, and in words and sentences that are imagined for writing. The very consciousness of the two are very different. The living tradition is continued by the oral word. It can be recorded down in manuscripts in whichever form that we want, but it was first imagined in the oral form. And that is the hallmark of a great tradition. And how does that continue? Temples later on came to be the epicenter of continuing that orality of our tradition, because this is where it became the center of the Guru Shishya Parampara. Earlier, and it does not mean that there were no other centers other than the temple. The earlier centers were, of course, wherever the Brahmins and the Yajmanas would gather to create a yajna, to offer a yajna, and around it, all the dharmic activities would go on. And that was the center of the great civilization continuously. Later on, this role was taken over more by the temples. It didn't mean that the yajna or all that wonderful tradition it ended. It meant that another tradition started, which understanding the nerve of the new uh, society, new time and place better, imagined and created an institution which was more suited to the needs of that era. the temple, if we go very briefly into its structure, the structure of a temple is imagined on the structure of a Yajna. So if you see the structure of a temple, the shikhar of a temple, it is broad at the base, and then it tapers down and ends in a single point in a kalash. And we cannot see it, but beneath the temple, beneath the vigraha of the deity, under the garbhagriha, there is another kalash, which contains the seed of the temple, which contains the seed of the deity of the divine. And there is the same kalash at the top of it. So you see this civilizational continuity. There is a kalash at the top, there is kalash at the bottom. And when the act of darshan takes place, it is actually the ascent and descent of consciousness. The supreme consciousness descends from above into the vigraha. The individual consciousness rises from the ground. And when the two meet in the vigraha, that is when the act of darshan takes place. So this entire structure, if you see the garbhagriha from the outside, if you see the walls of the temple, if you see the shikhar, the tapering shikhar, it is created in the image of a Yajna. It looks like the fire of a Yajna, like the various strands of fire, and at the top there is one single strand, and that is the Kalash. Dr. R. Nagaswamy has written a wonderful book in how even the iconography, Hindu iconography, directly derives from the Vedic Yajna, the Vedic roots of Hindu iconography. Because a lot of Western scholars claim that temple tradition is not central to Sanatana Dharma or whatever we had before, and that was a different Vedic tradition because there were no temples then, and then this came. But there is a direct continuity between them. When you perform a yajna, when you invoke the deity, when the deity comes in the fire, when you invoke them with words, that is the exact same process which happens in a temple. When a archak, when a priest invokes the deity, when a devotee approaches and offers worship, and when the archak invokes the deity, the same exact process is taking place. The devta comes alive in that vigraha that you see in front of you, and that is when the act of darshan takes place. So that there is a great continuity in our temple tradition, because in your journey, if you want to learn about our temples, if you want to learn about our ecosystem, at a lot of times you will be uh, led astray by the books which say that temples are not central to Sanatana Dharma. Even some well-meaning people and scholars on our side believe that the temples are not not central. They are not original to Sanatana Dharma. First of all, we do not have that idea. When time and place changes, a new institution can spring up while keeping the universal alive. But a new institution can spring up to carry forward that tradition. So temples are central to Sanatana Dharma because they are the carrier of the same Vedic heritage that we see in the Vedas. So it temples are the representative of the civilizational Hindu civilizational continuity direct from the times of Rigveda. There is no break. There is no ending of one tradition and a start of another. It is a continuation of the same tradition through a different institution. The very structure of a temple shows that, very study of Hindu iconography shows that, and a lot of other features also show us that there is direct continuity between the Vedic times and through Hindu temple structure, Hindu temple architecture, and the charya that goes on in that temple. This is important because temples also convey a continuation of the oral culture, even though they are very concrete in them. But if you visit a temple, you will see a lot of things happening. For example, once I entered the Kapaleshwar temple in Chennai, when I came there around 12, 13 years ago. As soon as I entered the temple, I saw that a lot of activity was going on, and one activity was there that classical performance was going on. And in that, I could see that three performers were giving a performance, and their guru was sitting right in front of them. Now, this is a kala, which is once again engineered towards seeking the ultimate truth. Even dance in Bharatvarsh would turn you, like Dr. Rajesh Mishra says, that everything in Hindu disciplines would take you from bhed to abhed. So difference to non-difference to unity to the idea of Advait. And so the Guru was there, the Guru who guided those his three students who were performing, giving the performance there. On the other side of the temple, I could see that very silently but murmuring, a part was going on. Sanskrit written in Brahmi script, and a Strotam was going on. They were chanting it. There also, there was a guru who was leading. There were shishyas who were sitting. And this tradition can be seen in any temple ecosystem. And what was being played there, the philosophy, the darshan of dance and music, was the philosophy which is portrayed on the walls of a temple in its culture, in its iconography, is the same philosophy which is given by that strotam which is played on the other side of the temple. And it is the same darshan which you see, which you experience inside the temple in front of the garbhagriha. And very interestingly, uh, this word is right in front of us and we need to understand it more. We call our philosophy darshanam. We do not call it love of wisdom like philosophy is, or some imagination, because philosophy as understood in the West is it is love of wisdom, and it is completely given to the flights of fancy imagination of a certain philosopher, at least now after the arrival of the Judeo-Christian cultural paradigm. But in Bharatvarsh, it cannot just depends on the flight of fancy of your mind. Hindu darshan begins where the activities of the mind cease to take place, where chitta vritti nirodh happens. That is where darshan is. Darshan is exactly what you see, as the word says. And you can understand this word by going inside a temple. The activity of having meeting the God inside the temple is the same. It is darshan. It is what you see literally there. So this is how important the institute of Gurukulam was. Agrahar, whether we called it Agrahar or not, but all over India, around every temple, Agrahar or some form of Guru Shishya Parampara went on. If you still go to Chidambaram temple, you will see a lot of studies happening there. If you still go to Kashi, you will see a lot of, every temple will have some form of Guru Shishya Parampara going on. The very institution of Kumbh Mela is engineered towards that, where all the gurus, all the great saints gather, and where the devotees come to take diksha and to uh, go forward with their knowledge and in their path towards seeking the ultimate truth. So Gurukulam is extremely central to it. Now moving on to how temples otherwise show continuity. I will once again start with another experience which forced me to think about how temples show continuity. Many of you would have gone to Sri Krishna Todupi. It is one of the greatest temples of the Madhva sect, and uh, it is a temple which is very alive, which is also very busy. Lakhs of devotees visit there uh, every year. And the important thing is, just like many temples in Kerala, most of the temples in Kerala, the agamas of Charya are being strictly followed there. So if you want to enter the temple, if you want to have darshan, men cannot have the upper body garment. They either there should just be an angavastram or nothing, and then you only can have dhoti. Women also have a dress code. Not just that, while you are inside the temple, whatever you see is happening there is it happens exactly as it happened 800 years ago. For example, they don't use electric lights. They offer the same bhog to Bhagwan every day. The way they uh, serve him by waving those chavars or waving the fence to make him feel more comfortable. Every activity that takes place is exactly how it happened 800 years ago. And a lot of people object that what is the entire point of this? What is the point of continuing? Is it just dogmatic blind following? that you keep continuing the same tradition just without thinking? No, it is not so. It is not just blind following. Because if you see around the temple, if you just come out of the temple, if you go to the city, you see that everything else has changed. Our civilization took a turn for another character when the so-called modern civilization came upon us. When we adopted electoral democracy, when we adopted modern institutions, when we adopted modern education, and when we adopted a lot of other things, our civilization took a very definitive turn towards a new sort of world. And in that society, you see that a temple is often the only institution which gives you a glimpse into what you were and what your original core is. Like I said, tradition is that which continues. But does that mean that tradition is only something which just continues? And tradition means that you have to keep continuing everything old. You cannot bring anything new. No, this is not so. If there can be nothing new, because the world around us changes all the time. If no new institution is coming up, if nothing new is coming up, then any system will fossilize, will ossify, and it will become obsolete in a very short time. So this is not so. At the same time, if if a certain institution keeps changing all the time, then also there won't be any tradition anymore, because there will be nothing, there will be no continuity. And as we discussed, continuity is extremely central to any tradition. So tradition is that which continues whatever is universal, always, along with keep changing according to time and place, whatever is necessary, whatever is required. So it's not that we just favor freezing things and following them forever, not at all. We not just prefer, there are inbuilt institutions in Sanatan Dharma which keep changing according to the time. But they keep the universals alive. They do not forget whatever the soul of Sanatan Dharma is, what the soul of our culture, our tradition, our civilization is. By keeping that sutra alive, they keep changing, adapting to the time and place, given time and place. So when you go to Sri Krishna temple at today, what does it remind you? That whatever is the universal in our civilization. Because when all the institutions around us break down, not just the greater community system, not just the joint family, even the nuclear family breaks down. All other tradition breaks down. Traditions break down, and when no longer anyone is telling you what to do with your life in order to lead a life which elevates your consciousness, and you get a better birth next time, so that you move towards realizing the ultimate truth. When there is no one to guide you, at least there will be these temples telling you what to do in the morning, how to get up, how to dress, what to eat, how to eat. This does not mean there is no individual agency, of course, but there is guidance, because there is no enforcement. You are not forced to go to a temple. But if you go to a temple, you have to follow a certain charya, you have to follow a certain routine. So if you seek, there will be guidance. If you seek, you won't be lost groping in the dark. If you seek, you won't be lost without uh, any leading light, without any guidance towards the path towards ultimate truth. So that is how important a temple is. It keeps guiding you wherever you need to go. It keeps telling you whatever is universal in our tradition. You can see one glimpse in Sri Krishna Math, Udupi, because you keep hearing these phrases a lot of these times. There is a tendency in modern institutions to push towards any traditional tendency. And most of these times, you don't even perceive how subtly they attack our most cherished, not beliefs, most cherished institutions by innocuous sites. Nobody can tell you what to wear, nobody can tell you what to eat. And they make it sound like that if you do, you become something like Sharia, which is obviously not so. But in lieu of that, they want to eliminate all guidance that how to conduct your life. Our Shastras are about how to conduct your life so you are led towards a better plane of consciousness, so that you can ultimately go towards the path of seeking ultimate knowledge, if not in this life, then in next life. But all of these institutions, they aid you and guide you. And the thrust of the modern institutions is to push against that, very subtle push against that. So in the ubiquitous presence of these modern aphorisms, so to say, temples are something which will say, and which much great confidence and authority, that this is exactly how you should conduct your day. If you want to go to a temple, for example, in Kerala or Sri Krishna Udupi, if you want to have good darshan, if you want to see the Shringara, the Pratham Shringar, which is in the morning of Sri Krishna, then you have to wake up very early, like at 4:30, which is how we should wake up in the morning. And you should take a bath. Before darshan, you should not eat anything. You should reach the temple in front of the Garbhagriha by 5 a.m., have darshan, then go out, then conduct your life. And this is how it is. This is how it should be. But the modern amenities in our lives, they have lulled us into luxury and comfort. And as we sink into those luxuries and comfort, we lose sight of how to conduct a life, which will lead us not towards more luxury, but towards more truth. And as I said, our civilization is nothing if not knowledge civilization. This is the central quest of our civilization. So if you go to a temple, then you have to wake up early in the morning. If you go to a temple, then you have to wake up a certain kind of food. If you go to a temple, then you have to behave a certain kind of way, wear certain kind of clothes, speak a certain kind of language, while at least as you are in those premises. So it gives you into a glimpse of how life would have been in the Vedic time, in the ancient time, in the great Puranic time. It gives you a glimpse into how a life can be and should be even now. And if you so want, if you so seek, then you can still lead it. So that is why this is extremely important. In food, to take another small example of the great Jagannath temple in Puri, 400, 500 years ago, the Columbian exchange was done. It means that Europeans discovered North America and South America, and they discovered a lot of fruits and vegetables there. And because it was the great colonial era, they shifted these fruits here and vegetables here and there. So a lot of what we eat today was not grown before 500 years. For example, there was no potato, there was no tomato, and there was no green chili. So the most favorite dish in North India today is the aloo tomato, so potato, tomato, and chili. The three ingredients in that preparation, that dish, were not there 500 years ago. But how to know it? See, we had now there are scholars who study, of course, and they scour through historical documents, they write books, and that is all very commendable. That is what we do. But we had a way of keeping track of things like this. When you go to Jagannath Puri, they will not be using anything which was not used 800 or 900 years ago. Their prasad, whatever they use, whatever ingredients that they use, whatever the way that they use to cook that food, is what happened 800 years ago too. So we see great civilizational continuity. This is how exactly what would have been 800 years ago. If you enter the temple, and Jagannath Puri has tall walls, if you enter the temple, you're inside the temple, you can forget that you are in 21st century. You can imagine that you are there 800 years ago, and there are lots of such temples in Bharatvarsh which are like that. So this great civilizational continuity is shown through these temples, our temples. Then the third small example that I will take of urban space is also there. I live in a very big city right now, and it's a very forward city in the sense that it is a city which has lots of economic growth, lots of rapid uh, townships coming up in every space, and every space, the natural space is being eradicated, eliminated, and new townships are coming up. And often in these environments, it is just the temple premises, where you can see how this city, how this space was just 30, 40 years ago, because the change is so rapid. The landscape is changed so rapidly, the culture is changed so rapidly that it is often when you enter the premises of a temple in such a great city that you realize that how situation would have been 100 years ago or just even 50 years ago. So if you go to a temple in such a great city, you see that there is a temple, you see that there is a sacred grove around it, you see that there is a water body, there are there are trees, there is natural environs, and even there are some animals which roam around there. Often it is only in these places that we can see how nature was until just a few decades or few hundred years ago. And that is where two beautiful institutions, if you would, if we can use that word, come together, where nature and culture come together. This is a vast topic which I cannot go into right now, but the definition of culture in the West has been the how man uses technology to conquer the forces of nature and to bend them to the needs of man. This is how they used to define culture, at least in traditional uh, religious paradigm, and even now, even after enlightenment, they kept doing that. This view of culture is very predatory. Of nature is very predatory. Their culture and nature are pitted against each other, and such a culture will always destroy nature. But if you see Bharatvarsh, this was never so. There was no conflict between nature and culture, but there was continuity. Because if you can see it through the temple ecosystem, it is not just advised, it is ordered that wherever there is a temple, now this situation is not seen anywhere else in a lot of temples, but wherever temple was, it was ordered that there should be a sacred grove, not just a garden, not just a manicured garden, a maintained garden. There has to be a wild sacred grove around it, which is not disturbed, which is let to continue as it is in its pristine form. There has to be a water body, either a lake or a pond. If there is no pond, then you have to create a water body, or it has to be on the banks of a river or on the coast of an ocean or a sea. So there has to be a sacred water body, there has to be a sacred grove, and of course, a sacred temple. This trinity of Hindu temple is always there. So while preserving culture, nature is also preserved. And for us, culture was that which preserved the sanctity of nature and elevated us, elevated human beings spiritually. We we also transcended nature. We also considered human birth important, but not physically. We are considered human important and better than other species is that we are able to self-reflect and to realize our true selves. And spiritually only we are able to transcend nature, not physically. And that is how that continuum of nature and culture went on. To moving on to after that I will end and you can ask questions. Moving on to the last and the most important one of a very important aspect of temple ecosystem, how state is connected to it. So if you go to a temple today, wherever it is functioning, wherever it is allowed to function, comparatively, relatively only, because the state has intervened almost everywhere completely in the workings of the temple, but a lot of places allow relatively undisturbed to function on their own. And if you go to some of these places, for example, if you go to Sringeri, Sri Sharda Peetham in Sringeri in Karnataka, you can see that there is a sacred grove. You can see that there is a sacred water body. River Tung flows through that temple, but and there is of course a sacred temple. So the temple ecosystem functions there extremely well. Now, how uh, the state was connected? What was the relation of state, temple, and people? We do a lot of these things. The thrust of the modern state is to push everything through state. If welfare has to be done, then the state has to do it. If an orphan child has to be taken care of, then the state has to do it. If pensions have to be taken care of, then the state has to do it. If the blind and other people in need, they have to be taken care of, then the state has to step in. Everything, state has to interfere, and everything is a function of money. So these two things. power and money, they become supreme. And they keep playing the game between themselves. They collaborate, or sometimes one becomes more important, sometimes other becomes more important. And there are, words for that in the West. There is oligarchy and there is totalitarian state and other things. But they keep playing the game. The thing is that knowledge never becomes supreme in that ecosystem. It is always either power or money or both of them. So either it's Artha Sarvopari or Shakti Sarvopari, brute force, but never Shakti, not in the sense, in the spiritual sense, but power and knowledge is never supreme. This hierarchy was appended in Bharatvarsh through Sanatana Dharma, through our system, and as we are discussing temples, through very much through temple ecosystem. We did, when temples came to rule Bharatvarsh, when temples came to rule Hindu society, every single social feature was conducted through temples, and we'll discuss how in very brief. Like in land and agriculture, we did social welfare through the temples only. We also did social welfare. It was not like we left. Right now, there is a binary, there is a debate that do you help, does the state help the people in need or does it not? But it was not so. The state also helped. But most of the social welfare was done through the temples. Even if the state would do it, it would mostly be through the temples. For example, the king and the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas would donate whatever they could, not directly to the people in most cases. In some cases, of course, they did, but individual level, of course, there was no centralization. So direct charity also happened. But most of them would donate. Big donations were made to the temple. So a king would come and donate a lot of land to the temple. A Vaishya would come and donate a lot of chal property, movable property to the temple. And it was the job of the temple to redistribute that wealth, which it received amongst the population of the society. So to create a greater equality, not absolute equality, that is not possible, but at least to bring people who have difficulty in eating, wearing, and fulfilling their basic needs, to redistribute that wealth back to the society. But that was done extremely beautifully. Temple did not just distribute things. It elevated people to a certain level by making a sacred contract between the people and the institution. For example, it would in turn give the land back to peasants to till. So if you do not have any land, the temples would give to the villagers around. They would give those land to the villagers to till, to farm, and they could keep the produce to themselves. They could transfer that right of farming that land and eating its produce, using its produce to their children in perpetuity. But they could not sell it. So that landscape would not be destroyed, that beautiful ecosystem would not be destroyed. They only could pass it on to their children, but they could not sell it. So money never became primary in that scheme. Another thing was that these people would have to offer a seva, a service in the temple. Every person who got the charity from the temple also offered a certain seva in the temple, either physically or in any other way. There are lots of things which keep happening in a temple, and they would serve in one way or the other. So this sacred contract between individuals and institutions did not make this act of charity as a right. Now charity is a right. Now the state would encourage you to think of it as a right. It is my right to gain this. It is my right to get this money from the state. And if it gets late, then you get frustrated, then you fight. And you see that after all the charity that the state does now, after all the welfare that the state does now, forget India. If you go to Europe, people are just still so dissatisfied. They always think that the state should do more. And the welfare state has reached to absurd limits there. Now they are arguing in UK elections that every single child in every home should have a separate, not just room, separate TV, not just a computer, but separate Wi-Fi connection so that it does not clash with other children. And these are actual election promises in their agendas. And this is how they go, because this is what happens in a democracy when you have to keep making promises every 5 years. So a temple, when would do it, it would not do it as a right. It would do it as a duty. Those who are receiving this charity would offer it as a service to the temple, being in great gratitude. So that's how the beautiful eco system would be built. Of course, in education, it would be Guru Shishya Parampara. Education in our country was never in market, in the sense that there was Guru, which all of these great gurus of different vidyas, not just I'm saying the path towards the ultimate seeking ultimate knowledge, but even other vidyas, they would there would be Guru and Shishya inside a temple, and the Shishya could go to a Guru and get all the education that they need. But there was no fixed fee. Of course, we all know that there would be donations to the temple and to the Guru as the need arose. But it would not be in market, it would not be sold. Knowledge could not be sold or bought like this. It only had to be uh, sought with great Shraddha, and had to be imparted also with the same attitude. And that is how the temple ecosystem, because it is around the temple that all of these great gurus also gathered. If you go to Goa, if you go to lots of temples in Goa, and it's a great story of temple reclamation. The Portuguese destroyed most of the temples. They shifted the entire kshetras inside in what is now Ponda Goa, which was interior and ruled by Hindu kings. And around each temple, you will see there is a patshala, there is a school, there is a hospital, there is an annakshetram where people would eat. So it is not just a spiritual institution, it is also social and social welfare institution. It is an educational institution. You can eat whenever you want. If you're hungry, you can eat and you can offer seva. And there is no commercial contract in this. If you're hungry, you go to a temple, you will get food. But you're expected to offer services so that those who are others who are needy may get the same service whenever they need it. And if you cannot offer any service, if you just need some help, you can of course go. Nobody will expect you to do anything. This is how that ecosystem worked. It also worked like that in law. This was the most surprising aspect to me, even in 21st century, even in 2022, 23. If you go to a temple, if you go to Bilawadi in Karnataka, if you go to the great Lakshmi Narayan temple in Chamba, and if you go to the Lakshmi Narayan temple in Chamba in Himachal Pradesh, enter the temple. In front of the main temple, there are 12 temples in the same platform. The biggest temple, it has a square in front of it. It is called as Nyaya Chabutra, which is a place for solving legal problems. And I asked, what is this? How does it happen? So most of the people, they take 99% of their problems not directly to the court, to state. They take it to the temple. They consider Bhagwan as Sakshi, the deity is Sakshi, and they discuss all their problems and solve all their problems there. It is such a beautiful system. First of all, it has no cost. Second, it does not create lasting bitterness or enmity. Third, it is geared towards solutions. The state is not interested in solutions. So the legal system, penal code is made whenever a crime has happened. After the crime has happened, they will uh, disperse the statement would be given, the sentence would be given, so that the guilty are punished. So it is interested in punishing the guilty, not in making the parties live. But a social system like this, geared towards dharma, and which I'm coming to, that everything is back to dharma, geared towards dharma, then the focus is on how those two families and communities can live together after this. We have seen caste hatred uh, propelled to a different level after the rights narrative was brought in, after the courts became the sole arbitrator in deciding all of these issues. Because the state is interested not in solving those troubles. But when you go to a dharmic, sacred authority, a temple authority, then its focus is on how to solve the problem, how so that the two communities can live with each other. So while there are differences, while there is injustice and grievance, it is sought out, justice is sought out, and a livable scheme can be created so that various communities can live with each other, various individuals can live with each other. And that is only done when dharma is at the center. So we see that in Bharatvarsh, in the sacred civilization of Sanatan Dharma, We kept dharma always at the center, and dharma is what the great balance is. We kept knowledge always at the center, and that is why all the hierarchies, knowledge is the supreme hierarchy. And at least in the last 2000 years, Hindu temple has been the agency, Hindu temple has been the institution to do that. This is how our civilizational continuity has been maintained so far, and this is how it will be maintained even in future. Because we see that most of our institutions are disappearing or have already disappeared. It is only the agency of a temple. Even today, a lot of us, we go to a temple on a festival. We go to a temple to seek how to celebrate a festival, how to complete a ceremony. For example, the sanskaras in a child's life, in a person's life, they are also, all of them are conducted in or near a temple. They are the centers which can keep our dharma not just alive, but they can keep the individual lives infused with dharma. And that is why, for our civilizational continuity of Hindu dharma to continue, Hindu society to continue, Hindu temples and their continuity has to be maintained. Thank you. I just tried to provide a glimpse into what Hindu temple ecosystem is in view of Gurukulam, in view of a state, and how temple is at the center of it. I'm sure this is not enough. I'm sure a lot more needs to be delivered, and maybe next time, maybe when I learn more. Thank you. Thank you. I hand it over now to the organizers.
So that was really amazing, and we were spellbound by the by all the information which you gave, and it was really eye-opening. And I'm sure everybody would, join me in saying the same thing. And how you brought in Sanatan Dharma and merge it into the temple, and looking into integrating it completely with the culture and the lifestyle of the past, and how it come into the present. I'm really spellbound, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. And I just hope that many more people will watch this, really get benefited by this. And thank you, sir, for joining us, Professor Saxena and Professor Pankaj Saxena, and of course Professor Rajaram, for doing this whole series and creating, bringing such wonderful speakers to us. Thank you so much. Hope, and thank you viewers too for this. I hope you take home a lot from this.
Thank
and
you,
also
Dr.
special thanks to Mr. Praveen, who has been instrumental to connecting us with Mr. Pankaj Saxena. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Madhura Prasad Suman. I have to thank you very much for the wonderful talk, the accelerating talk delivered by Dr. Pankaj Prasad. I would like Dr. Pankaj Prasad to put it in the form of a book in English, and later it can be translated to Tamil, because most of the things which told today, quite many people would not have heard about it. Certain things are quite innovative, and all is shows his utmost innovative ability. So I request Dr. Saxena to write a book about 200 pages.
He has written books, sir, and I think he is now. We are all going to read his books, I think.
Already written book, okay. It has come already in the form of a book. Okay. So it can be translated to Tamil, so that Tamil people will find it useful. Thank you very much, Dr. Saxena. Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Prasad Suman. Dr. Mohan Prasad, immense thanks to you. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Shall we close?
Yes, sir. We can close the meeting.
Okay.